Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Vernon Richards Show. I said Vernon Richards. Damn! The Vernon Richards Show. It's two of us.
It was correct. It was correct the first time. It's my show, and you're on it.
If you want to take, you take the lead. You off you go. It's Vernon's show, right? What are we talking about today, Vernon? How are you?
I am good, man. I am real good. It's been a really, really, really interesting week so far. In fact, it's been an interesting few weeks actually. We've both had an interesting few weeks.
Ups and downs,
So, yeah.
like positives and some downs. But yeah, positive for you is
If we get into it, see, I don't know how much you want to get into this because it's a little bit woo-woo. But the positive for me is that I went to Brussels last month to speak at a meetup in Brute meetup.
Nice.
That my dear friend Baron van Dalen organises with his friend Christoph, and I can't remember your last name, Christoph, but I know it's awesome. But unfortunately, on the way back, I lost my suitcase, so I got my suitcase back this week. So that was a big fucking win, and everything was still in it. That's what I was most amazed about.
It took a week.
Even something than that, my very good friend Nicolette Lindgren and I have co-authored a book called The Software Tester's Journey, and it has been released technically on Monday night, and it's very cool. It's just very cool to have written a book, and it was fun, and it was interesting, and the topics are great, and I just want to write another one now.
Oh,
Just
already?
want to write another one now. Yeah.
Wowie.
Oh yeah, mate. I'm like, let's go. That was fun.
So where can people buy this book? Where's the link?
If you had oh, hold on. Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you. That if you go to leanpub.com/testers journey, all one word, you can grab yourself a copy of the book. So we're going to start with a Leanpub version, so just be digital, and then we see how we go. There will, the book comes with a spelling mistake guarantee. So once our early readers have discovered all the spelling mistakes, then we'll be more comfortable to commit.
That's just the P5 book, It's not cosmetic. Yeah.
Probably, but no, it was a really fun experience. I found it a bit challenging at times. There was like a good few months where I didn't do anything on the book. But then once I found my groove again, it was great. And Nicola has a YouTube channel going on. She's got a blog going on, so she's just full of all these ideas. I'm pretty sure it's the third software testing related book that she's written. Pretty sure she's also written a children's book, I think, as well. It's pretty cool. So yeah, I just enjoyed it. I over the last 2 years, I've discovered how much I like writing, and so I've been blogging, and then Nicola was like, "Oh, I'm writing this book. Do you want to join in with me?" And I was like, "Hey, sure. Are you kidding?" She told me the idea that she had and the angle. I was like, "Oh yeah, 100%. I'd love to get involved." So this is my first ever attempt, and I enjoyed it, and I would like to do more. I've definitely got the bug. I'll definitely be talking to my other good friend Melissa Eden, who is also an author. She writes fantasy books, I would say. Not science fiction, more fantasy books, but the amount of research that she puts into those books is really fascinating and incredible. And so maybe for the next one, I'd need to do even more research into it. But yeah, we've got some great help from our contributors. We've got great support from our other halves. We even got some testimonials from some early readers of the book. So thank you to all of you people. Yeah, man, it's been good. It's been a fun experience so far.
I would love to say I'm going to read it, but I think I told Mark I would read his first book about 3-4 years ago, and I'm just not a good reader. It's nothing to do. It's nothing personal. It's just reading makes me really tired.
This is the friendly
Yeah,
test.
no. I will
Kidding, I'm
try and
kidding.
read it. But like what so yeah, check out the book, everyone. But what I wanted to ask you then was, you mentioned, that it was hard when you had a long period away from the book, right, away from writing. And something I am reading right now is I'm rereading. I only kind of read half of it, but I'm trying to fully read the Fieldstone Method by Jerry Weinberg, because while I've never written a book and my content creation days are bleak at the moment, right? Outside of this, but like used to be quite prolific a long time ago, and I'm keen to get that back. And I think there's a few things I've observed in my own pattern is that I used to be very good at taking notes and collecting my thoughts and my ideas so that I could call upon them at another time. So like we've been, talking about, we need to have a better backlog of content for the podcast. We need to start adding bullet points so we can just go, hey, pick that one, off we go, conversation on the way, right? Instead of the 20 minutes beforehand where it's like, what the hell are we going to talk about today? What are we going to do? But the reason why I read in the Fieldstone Method again is, even though it's about writing, my brain decided that there's probably so many nuggets of information from Jerry Weinberg in that book about how to just collect and store these stones, as he calls them, right? So that I can then call upon them at a future time. So that's something I'm keen to do now, is to try and start collating these ideas so that when let's say the bug to write a book arrives, you're not suddenly going looking for stones, right? You've already got a nice organized catalogued, of what do you call it, ideas and stones. Because I remember this, so I'm just gonna go down here. Jerry talks about carrying a little book all the time, right? And I remembered that I used to carry lots of little books, and I just don't anymore. So lots of little books that used to have, I used to just write little notes in, and there's probably gold inside all of these books. I've kept all of them. I've kept all my testing notebooks from my whole career. So
Nice.
no idea what's in them, but basically I want to get better at collecting the thoughts as they come, and then having them there. So maybe books would come up.
Yeah, I started reading. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say I started reading that book years upon years ago, but I never finished it. You just reminded me all about it, so I will go back and read that. There's another method that I came across by a dude called Matthew Dix. He wrote a book called Storyworthy, and he has this habit where every night he will write down a story that happened that day. And when I say story, he's not literally writing out this.
Yeah.
Imagine it's just a one-liner.
An experience, a moment. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the story of today? Like, what happened today that was interesting? And then you build up these things, and then you use that as a foundation and basis to practice telling stories. So that is a habit that I really want to get into, because if you think about it, I think this might be relevant for some of the other adventures I've had this week. So you want to get in the habit of building in public, and building in public doesn't just mean things like social media or blogging and things like that. It means in your place of work as well, because you want to be able to demonstrate your value or demonstrate what you've learned. Not just to promote yourself to some degree, but also just so things are fresh in your mind. Okay. So whenever you are called upon to talk about what you've did for whatever reason, or to help somebody with an experience that you've had, you're in the habit of sharing these stories, or because you've written it down, or because you've discovered it, because you've talked about it before. It's easy to just go grab it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're more used to doing it. So, yeah.
And I think that goes to the same with actually creating the content. So another author, a friend of ours, Mark Winteringham, he got into the habit of writing an hour a day, every day. And he said, some days it was just absolute trash that you delete the next day. But it was purely the habit of writing every day got to the point where, it became majority of it would get kept, right? But keeping that momentum going is something I want to do, and I think it's the same at the moment for me. I feel like I want that momentum in the collecting stone space. So, I'm reading stuff on LinkedIn. I'm sadly still a little bit on Twitter because I think the dev community still active there, so I like to see what they're doing. But I'm not storing it like I used to. I used to bookmark it and put it in Trello. I used to keep little notes for me to go back to, and I've lost that habit. So I think if I can rebuild that habit, then producing content off the back of these stones would be my next logical step, I feel.
Another thing about Twitter. Well, it's funny you should say that. Quick tangent. Can't remember who I was talking to. Who was I talking to recently? Might have been Chris Armstrong. But I am going to get into the habit now. I am going to use Twitter and X independently, but specifically. So Twitter is the app that we all used before Elon bought it. And then X is the thing that Elon has turned it into after buying it. So when I say Twitter, I'm talking about not just an app, but a specific time.
Okay.
So on Twitter, you used to get into conversations with people, and I've always found the conversation about ideas and topics and things to be the Fieldstone almost. So I can remember that I had a certain conversation with a certain person about something. I may not be able to say, oh, it's definitely about this. It was on this day. So I'm sure I had a conversation with Mitch about how to, implement selectors in Selenium or something. Let me go and have a look on Twitter and have a look for that.
That's what you mean,
I think those conversations themselves are Fieldstones. I think you and I, in the before times, pre-plague, we were involved in the conversation around testing, not just digitally, but in person. I mean, you and I, with Bill and Simon, organised the Midlands Exploratory Workshop in testing. We ran a few of those. Fantastic conversations. It was like a Fieldstone mine. There were just so many ridiculous ideas from the attendees. Some serious learning moments. Some of them were tougher to hear than others. Shout out to you, Abby Bangzer. But they were. I think it's that, and okay, I have to mention it. Quick tangent. So this week, folks, I have found myself on the wrong side of a redundancy. Well, I say wrong side. Maybe we'll come back to that later. But the only reason I bring it up is because I was in the habit every week. I had pairing sessions with people like my friend Patrick Krill, my pal James Thomas, Joao Proença, Lizzie Hocker. Every week we'd pair on something, and usually we'd either be chatting and or pairing. So with Joao, I would tend to just chat and say, "Oh, this is happening," and get some support on something. He'd say, "Oh, don't worry about it, man. Here's what you got to do." I'd try and have some kind of regular chats with Patrick. James and Lizzie, I would just sit there and just absorb as much information as I can because they are so fun.
In awe.
They're just very impressive human beings. So all of those things are Fieldstones for me. I like interacting with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing, right? There's still interaction going on, but I think Twitter, let's use the proper name, it was the home of testing for quite a long time, right?
It really was
the home of these conversations and the sharing. And then obviously now it kind of went off into Slacks, and then they've come and gone, and then it's kind of ended up a little bit on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn's kind of has a lot of other noise in it, around testing. I'm not saying it was all the cool kids, for want of a better phrase, on Twitter, but it was a lot more, forward-thinking conversations, whereas LinkedIn's a bit of everything.
Do you know what? I think the big differentiator between Twitter and X, I'm lumping them together.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, might have talked about this before. I was talking to Chris about this, Chris Armstrong, and he described it absolutely perfectly. He said, on Twitter, you can be your whole self. You didn't have to think. So on Twitter, he could talk about software testing. He could talk about software development. He could talk about leadership. He could talk about management. He could talk about pro wrestling. He could talk about the Eurovision Song Contest. He could talk about
big
footy.
fan. Yeah, he's a big fan.
Yeah, he could talk about anything. But on LinkedIn, I'm not talking about all those topics, man. I'm keeping it very more considered. I'm thinking about, am I going to lambast Richard because we pasted Manchester United on LinkedIn? No, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not proposing to turn it LinkedIn into Twitter either, by the way.
No, I don't think so. Because you reminded me as well, like, one of the problems with Slacks was that there was less of that professional, there was less of the LinkedIn side on them, and there was more of the Eurovision, wrestling, randomness, right? That kind of like made it like not really about testing. And I think that's always going to be a challenge with where people now find a space. But yeah, it is a shame what's happened to it, but there is spaces out there and there is people want these conversations. I think they're now I think you have to invest a bit more effort to get them than it kind of used to be. I remember pre-Twitter, right? We used to comment on people's blogs, right? Used to have back and forth at the bottom of blogs using like Discuss and what other plugins you could have. Forums have obviously been and gone. Like there is still spaces, but I think they're now, I think instead of having less one space where everything was acceptable, you've now got to go to the right space for the right kind of conversation, which means it's more cognitive load, more barriers, which kind of stops people from doing some of it. Because like, as soon as you get a barrier, it's like, okay, I can't bother posting anyway now. Like, move on.
I think it was a bit of a big miss that 2022 and pre-2022, Twitter.
Yeah.
That town square vibe, that vibe where you could just go there and you could just strike up a conversation with anyone. It would be cool. You could find your people on Twitter. I'm not sure how we got onto this topic because we started talking about a book.
Fieldstones, collecting Fieldstones. So like,
that was it.
But I think like it wasn't the topic we were planning on talking about, but I think it's really important because like you've just mentioned yourself, right, about being made redundant. You've mentioned that you've been writing a book. I've mentioned that I want to be producing more content, right? But these ideas have to stem from somewhere. And I think as an industry, the more that we collect Fieldstones, as Jerry's word is, basically, if you don't know what a Fieldstone is, it's a nugget, it's an idea, it's an experience, it's a thought, it's an observation, it's anything that you can basically might be useful to you in the future. And that's how Jerry probably has a better definition that I will have read and not remembered. But I feel like collecting them has lots of benefits. So where I am right now, I want to use them to create content, right? Once I get my confidence back and I've got better processes in place, I want to start producing more content. And that needs sparks, right? It needs ideas, it needs stories, it needs observations. The potential, like about your context, people when they come try and write their CVs or they try and write covering letters, you've got to try and remember those stories, those experiences, those skills, that time when someone, told you how amazing you were at your job. What were they telling you that for? Because that's clearly something you need to be putting on your CV prominently, in shining lights, because you've been given that nugget of information. But if you've not been recording that, and like the obvious massive one, because it's coming up to the end of year as well, right? When you comes round to reviews, everyone hates this time of year. Oh God, I need to write feedback. I need to get feedback. But if you were collecting them all year long, and I know it's hard, but it makes life, yeah, me too, but it makes life so much easier. So I think as a general career advice, it is really solid advice to be collecting these stories, these Fieldstones, ready for whether it's content, for CVs, for any sort of medium that you need to produce and share. Like even little stories, like, when I've been mentoring and coaching testers, these little stories where you can remember being in their shoes and you can share an experience. It's so much better than telling them what the right thing to do is. So actually in this situation, you should do A. actually, let me tell you a story, and it might be it might be a long time ago, but still, I was in this position and this happened to me and I felt this way and I did this. Oh, and what? I tweeted about that, or I wrote this about that. And then they see that you can relate a lot more instead of you being maybe robotic and you happen to have read, a training guide and it told you to behave in a certain way. So yeah, I think that, these Fieldstones, these nuggets, we need to start doing more of it. And then my other call to action, seeing as we're on this now, and I found a soapbox from somewhere, is that we, and I'm accusing myself of doing this now. I feel like we need to get that conversational vibe back that you just mentioned, the commenting on people's posts, the commenting on their blogs directly. We literally, as we clicked record, we got a comment on our YouTube video. And I think the time it takes to share these little, nuggets, they're going to help you. They're going to help us. And then one more off the back of kind of like the sharing idea is, and I think we mentioned it on the pod ages ago, and I really need to get back into it. And it might help with my Fieldstone work as well, is when you read something, just sharing it with a reflection, not just pressing the repost button.
Yep.
Add a little frame into it, add a little reflection, add a little bit of why you're sharing it, because that starts the conversation. Like,
add a bit of your bit of flavor, your perspective. Add a little bit of seasoning to the share. I mean, give it some. That's. I've added to it. I've built upon the thing, and maybe it's not positive. Like I see. Man, I see Dan North all the time. He's saying, essentially pulling people up on ideas that he thinks are unhelpful, excluding, gatekeepery.
Yeah.
He's constantly saying, no, don't do that. That's out of order. Here's the danger when you do this. This is a problem. Here's why this is challenging. Please do not do this thing. So you can do that. And there's ways of doing it. You don't have to do it like a complete lunatic. You can do it in either way. I think that's an excellent call to action. Let's try and be a little bit more interactive.
Yeah.
I just want to hype up the book real quick. So basically, this kind of thing that we are talking about now is covered in the book a little bit. It's around.
I'm laughing because this was not planned. Yeah, go on.
No, there's a chapter on networking, and there's networking comes up a few times in the book, for example. And so, if you have been in software testing, for maybe a year or 2 or 3, and you're wondering what it is that you would like to do next, the book is kind of been written for you with that in mind. So, to Rich's point, please go get the book, and then give Nicola and I some feedback.
Yeah,
because we would love to know.
Start a conversation about what you read in the book. Start a conversation about your favourite chapter. Start a conversation about a chapter you think's missing. And start conversations about the typos that you found. But yeah. And one more thing I would say, because we've mentioned a few people who we've been having conversations with who are looking for jobs, right? That's another thing that I often immediately click the repost button because I've got a large network and I think people will see it. But I think on reflection, it would be better for me to probably repost that with a story about that person. Yeah, which I've not been doing. But I think that's I think you're giving that person more value by sharing a simple story that says, this one time I worked with this person on A, or I saw this person do B.
Yes.
Or here's a story about how this person is an amazing human being. Just to give that little bit of, like you said, a little bit of seasoning, a little bit of personal, insight into, why you want to share that post.
It's more of a testimonial in a way, because you're essentially saying here is my experience of this person. Here is why I'm happy to recommend that you talk to this person if you have this kind. So in this situation, this is how this person helped me, or this is what they did, and this is what made it astounding, and this is what made it really interesting, or whatever. And then other people who are hiring who have a similar kind of challenge or problem. I'm telling you, man, that kind of stuff, it works. It's real. You know, I've had people reach out to me because they'll see somebody, they're interviewing somebody who's in my network that's not in theirs. And they're like, oh, what do you know about such and such? It's, oh yeah, you just write them a quick little, you know, referencey type thing, a bit of almost like a little testimony. So, oh, they were awesome, and that and the other. Assuming they were awesome, like if they were less
if
awesome,
they weren't,
then you
you're
find
not going
a
to be one of those
diplomatic
people.
way to convey that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Awesome. Right. Well, on the topic of networking, I went to Husteth last week, so probably
what up to, Richard?
2 weeks when you listen to this. But yeah, I went to Husteth, which is a conference in Budapest. I actually don't know what Husteth stands for. Probably should, but I don't. So, the Hungarian Software Testing Forum. It's all right. I found it. Hungarian Software Testing Forum. Really interesting conference. So they have some sort of, so it's organized by the Hungarian Testing Board, which is associated to ISTQB. But
Are you about to start ranting?
No, I'm not ranting. What I want to say is they've spotted, I think they might be one of the first testing boards to spot the opportunity to bring kind of the community, I'm going to call it, because I don't have a better name for it, right? But kind of not the anti-ISTQB brigade, right? But the people who are really open about sharing their own thoughts, stories, ideas, etc., like away from an academic, more formal way. And they've created this event that kind of bridges both the worlds, but done it in a really great way. It's not an ISTQB conference, just to be clear, it's not. Right, it's organized by the testing board, but it is not anything. There's no, like, they're listed as a sponsor, but they probably paid for that. I don't know, right? But they're there, as well as everyone else. But yeah, I had an amazing time. I've organized a lot of conferences, and I feel like I've treated speakers incredibly well. But like, I was treated like incredibly well. I had that awesome moment when you get off the plane and you walk through the doors and there's someone holding the little sign with your name on it, right? And I was talking to Christopher Nordstrom about this, and like, it's a feeling that makes you feel like amazing, right? It makes you feel like you've made it, like you're some sort of like rock star, right? And I was joking with Christopher about this, but you can buy that for like €30, right? But no one does, right? You know what I mean? You can pay a tiny amount of money to have that all the time. But yeah, so they had a taxi waiting for me. Amazing. Straight to the hotel. Hotel was all sorted. There was taxis every morning to the venue because they put us up in the city, Budapest. Lovely city. Never been before. Really nice. Beautiful. But the venue was kind of a purpose-built place. So there was taxis there every morning, taxis waiting to bring us back at the end of every day. There was a speaker's dinner on a rooftop. There was socials. And the organization, especially shout out to Chilla, one of the organizers. Immediate replies, very polite when chasing you, because, every speaker gets chased at some point, but, it wasn't like, give us your slides now. Like, you're overjoyed. It was always like nice and polite. And then, I would say the other thing from the event particular, they kind of did Q&A at the conference, which, always goes very differently at every event. Sometimes you get the questions that aren't questions, right? But they kind of morph the online world with the physical world. So Q&A was done via the app, and then they put it on the screen. So questions were coming in as the talk was going on, and they basically like Slido, and then they were using Slido. The compare was using Slido to ask the questions instead of going to someone in the room and the whole running around and microphones. I think it made Q&A work. There wasn't enough time for Q&A, but I liked the morphing of like the tech with the event to handle Q&A. So
were they still able to
moderate.
vote?
Vote and moderate. Yeah. So questions were moderated in like they didn't appear until they were approved, and then people were voting
Nice.
at the same
Nice
time.
people.
But I would say, like,
Nicely
from
done.
an audience point of view, they were really engaged, like asking questions and voting and even rating talks. Like, the incredible, like the audience themselves were just dead involved, dead engaged, and contributing more than just sitting there and listening to the talks, which was really nice to see. So yeah, if you've not been to Husteth, if you've not heard of it, great conference. They cover your travel accommodation. They're not paid to speak. And it was really, really well organized, and yeah, I can't wait to go back. I hope I get to go back one day.
Got the rich seed of approval.
Yeah, it wasn't on the list. Like if you'd asked me, a year ago what events to go to, it wasn't on my list. It is now. Yeah, it's up there now. Definitely recommend.
Awesome.
But I do have to tell you a story about my talk. So
okay, what?
So, a few things actually. Like, I'll try and do it in order. So, I was the closing keynote, which is amazing.
How long is the conference then?
The conference is a day of tutorials / workshops, and then 2 days of conference talks.
So there's been a day of hands-on workshop stuff, 2 days.
Yeah.
And on the final day,
yeah,
it's you. You're bringing the house down.
Yeah.
You're closing this out.
Yeah.
Take us home, Rich. Wow. Okay.
And
nice,
there's two aspects of that I need to remember to call upon. One really positive and one not so positive from my own experience, as well as what actually happened on the stage.
Okay.
So one, being a closing keynote is always great, and I think talking at the start of a conference is good if you want to get the anxiety and the stress out the way, right? And you can just enjoy the event. But then there's also, when you talk last, you don't have to do this, but I think I quite like it when people weave the talks from the day into your talk. I kind of like, I like to do that if I can. So you get that benefit, and you kind of, you're wrapping the party up or wrapping the event up. But yeah, what happened is 3/4, 2/3 into my talk, there was a power cut. So the conference has this massive, 30-foot screen behind you, right? It's massive. The screen's in front of you.
Wait, sorry, I just interrupt. Go and find, the Husteth pictures of the stage and some of the speakers. You'll get the stage looked so good. My word, it looked absolutely brilliant.
Well, this was recorded, so I've asked them for the video of this. Yeah, I've asked them for the video of this because no one took pictures when it had gone off. I asked everyone if you had a picture. No one took any because I'll tell you why in a minute. But anyway, screen goes black, completely off, completely black. Microphone dies. Screens go black. Lights are off. But not completely the whole building, right? Just the stage area. So
end of day.
yeah. So they've got to compare, and she's like a professional compare. So she's not a tester or anything like this. And she was like panicking, but like this is what I'll be vulnerable and honest, right? Everyone who's been listening to this pod or following me, I've been having a bit of a shit time of recent. Well, I'll say recent, like the last year, right? Things are pretty good at the moment, but for a split second, I was like, what the fuck have I done to the world? Like, why me? Why pick on me? Like, of all this, and then that lasted for probably like half a millisecond, and I just went, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing here. And what had happened before the talk started is, I don't know where this came from, or maybe one of the Husteth people, if they listen to this, can explain. There was a message about drinking beer. There was too much beer left, right? They asked you to drink the beer. So I asked for a beer before I went on stage, and they gave me the beer.
Yeah.
But as part of my keynote, I wanted to go straight into a story. So I didn't want to walk out holding this beer, then having to put it down at some point because I like to use my hands, right? So I left the beer backstage. So as soon as this power cut happened, and I got over my initial half a second of, God, why me? I went backstage, and I said, when it all goes down... No, yeah, but I came back with the beer, and I said, when it all hits the fan, drink beer, right? And obviously everyone started laughing. And then I did another joke. I made these up on, obviously I made it up on the fly, but like my laptop was obviously still on, right? So I lifted my laptop up and turned it round to everyone and went, can you see the slides? Like, pretended like I was going to carry on. But yeah, the lady came out to compare. I actually can't remember what I said to her, but I was like, hey, look, it's fine. I'll just carry on. I've been in worse situations. I've been organising events and ended up cooking burgers in the kitchen, right? So, this is not a complex situation for me personally. Other people might be very different, but for me, I was like, it's not that bad. So I carried on talking for, must have been a couple of minutes, just, encouraging them to picture the slide that was on the screen before it went down. And yeah, like got through it. I think 2, 3, 4 minutes later, the power came back on and things started coming on bit by bit. Microphone was the last thing to come back on. But yeah, I had a loud voice. But yeah, I got through it, delivered the talk, and then it led to a hilarious Q&A. Because I think not saying my talk was dry, but the whole event like lifted everyone up. And I think the jokes lifted everyone up. And then when it came to the end to Q&A, the compare came out and, praising me for handling the situation. And we kind of got onto loads of questions. There was loads of, and I love Q&A. So at a conference, I personally believe Q&A is when a speaker gets to shine. So I can prepare a talk, right? I can rehearse it to the T. I can become robotic. I don't do that. If anyone who knows me now listening to that's probably laughing their head off. I do not do that. I finish my slides an hour before. I very rarely practice. And that's just my style. I'm not saying people should do that. But Q&A, I feel, is where, number one, you really connect to the audience because they're there and they're asking you that question. And number two, it almost feels like a measure of, do you actually know what you're talking about? Or have you just stuck a few ideas together to make a talk?
Kind of. I think to link it back to what we talked about before, I just see the Q&A as a moment to interact. And the feedback loop has just gone down to nothing. So instead of me writing a blog and then you comment on the blog and I have to go notice that you've commented and then reply, it just all happens in the moment. So I've given you my idea, I've shared my experience, I've, developed or shared the content, and then I get the interaction immediately. And now it becomes this two-way thing. And I think that's really, I know what you're getting at there. You really do get to understand how well, or even, not even how well for me, it's more how much do they dig this topic that they just talked about.
That's it.
That's what I enjoy
how much
seeing.
Did you? Like, I feel like what you're going to say. How much did you deliver the message you were trying to? Because if the first question is, "Can you explain A again?" I'm not saying you did a bad job, but like, it kind of might give you a bit of rethinking that actually maybe I need to tweak the way I explain that a little bit next time I deliver this talk, so I can answer it now. Maybe. Or maybe they might have missed a subtle piece of information that I shared, but yeah, definitely. I do love the Q&A bit.
Because the talk is more like a performance. So you could theoretically give the same talk twice, but it won't be the same talk twice.
Yeah.
Because you're not the same person. You're probably not in the same venue. The audience is not the same, etc., etc., etc. So, in a very real sense, it never is the same talk twice. And that means there will be variations in it.
Yeah.
There are different things that will happen. If you're quite improvisational, I don't know if that's a word, but if you are quite improvisational, like it sounds like Richard is, I definitely am. I would internally, if the lights went out internally, there's definitely a part of me that would be doing this.
Yeah.
That is excited that something's gone wrong because now you can play around with it. The Q&A is the same. You don't
Yeah.
know what the questions are going to be.
Absolutely.
You don't know what resonated with people.
Yeah.
And you can be
Absolutely.
like, oh, that's a really good question. I can now go and build on this topic some more. It's a fun part of the.
I was
fun
chatting
part of
to
the,
one of the speakers in the evening, and I would love to now have a talk in the future where there isn't a power cut in it. So like you literally, instruct the visual staff or to cut the lights, cut the slides, and you treat it as part of the story. Like I don't know, something. I just plan it into the talk where you're like, yeah, and on this day everything wasn't working and everything went black, and then it just all dies. Like just make it part of the show. But yeah, it was hilarious, and I can't wait for the video because I think I can remember most of it. But yeah, the Q&A at the end just led into hysterics. I can't like we.
What were people doing?
I can only remember. I can only
what-
remember one bit of it. So everyone was in great spirits, right? Questions were flying, and they were praised. Like we were talking about how well I handled it and stuff like this. And the problem I had at one point was then the host was asking me a question, right? English is not her first language, right? So she had amazing English, but obviously, she also spoke quite fast. And also the queue and the questions were on a screen in front of me, but it was quite small. And as she started asking the next question, I zoned out and I was trying to read the screen. And then when I came back, I had no idea what she was asking me, right? So when the end of the question came, I had two options. One is just to answer what I thought the question was, or what I actually asked her to do. I said, "Can you repeat it?" I said, "Sorry, can you repeat that?" That's all I said. And then she went, "If you need to do this," she started talking really slowly, humorously.
Okay.
But
Okay.
and then I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, no, I didn't mean like that. But I didn't say this to her. I let her continue. And the audience are pissing themselves. Like they're laughing. And it just became like me and her just started bantering around the Q&A. It was just a good end. And then it got really awkward. And I'm going to share this. We might edit this out, but it got really awkward. They wanted to give me a prize for handling it well, but they obviously had no prizes. So they gave me a box of tissues. And it was weird. It was weird. She handed me a box of tissues, and it was like, I think the angle was to go off and cry, but instead I opened the tissues and I wiped my brow. It's like sweating. But yeah, it was funny. I can't wait for the videos because I wanna make a GIF of the moment that it all goes off, and I'm hoping the video record battery in it and wasn't just on the mains because that should still be recording.
Can you imagine? Oh my god!
But yeah, and then the negative side of the closing keynote, as the other point I mentioned, is, and this is a feedback I actually need to email the organizers. Is before the break we did a panel discussion, and then we had a break, and then we had the closing keynote. But then it was the end of the day. So as a speaker, I lost out, or I feel like I lost out on that hallway benefit speakers get. I saw your talk, or, I really like your talk and I've got this question. There was no time for that. And I feel like, I'm not saying keynote speakers are better in any way, but
that is absolutely what he's saying, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm saying their keynotes are put on a pedestal, right? But as an attendee, they then had no opportunity to talk to me or ask me questions. And I feel as a speaker, I missed that, to be honest, because at the end of the event, we're all taking pictures of all the speakers and the organizers and stuff like this. And all the attendees have gone. You know what I mean? They've gone home. So I'm not saying, I don't know what should be at the end of the day or how it should be structured. But I feel like being the last speaker at an event, I felt like I lost that kind of connection with the audience because you're last. Maybe there should be a social, or maybe something like a panel should be at the end instead of the keynote. I don't know. I don't have an answer for them. That's my emotions of feelings of not getting that engagement one-to-one with some of the some of the attendees that you do get if you're talking earlier. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know.
I don't know. We're trying to think back to when I was in that situation at Agile testing days. Definitely got some interaction, but I'm trying to remember if they still had an event on that last day. I know a lot of people were leaving.
Yeah, people do leave. Like, it could just be an hour social. You know, it could be even arranged with the speaker to stay for half an hour and tell the attendees that Richard's going to stay for half an hour. I just feel like there needed to be. I feel like there's a way of improving it, is what I'm saying. I don't know what it is, but I feel like there's a way of it. For me personally, I feel like it could have been a better experience for me if there was something planned afterwards, where even if it was just me, you know, send me to a pub and tell people I'm going to be there, or, you know, tell me to go sit in the breakout area, or, you know, if they have to leave the venue, I'll just go wait outside near the door, you know, something that invited it.
Stop people from talking to you at the end of the talk.
So because it was they then did the sponsor thank yous, they did the sponsor prize draws, they did the closing remarks, and then they closed the conference. Okay. That was the end. And then they again, this might be the way it was, just the way it was done, was then they asked all the speakers and sponsors and everyone to come on stage and take pictures. So as that was happening, obviously people started funneling out. So I think it was more that they ended and people left, and then we were doing more, you know, pictures and stuff. So yeah, I don't have an answer.
Okay.
I just, as an observation for me, I love the engagement that you get after delivering a talk where people, you know, even if it's just one person, but people come up to you and they say, oh, you know, I like that bit. Can we talk more about this bit? Especially when I really feel that when you talk at a conference, not in England, so a non-English speaking conference, when you're there as well, because I feel like that kind of, it's like an icebreaker, right, to approach speakers, and I think even attendees feel a bit more confident talking to you about your talk. Not everyone, but I feel that as a general rule, that a general heuristic that I've had, that people find that a bit easier.
Okay,
but yeah,
well, it sounds like the overall experience of Husteth was overwhelmingly positive.
Absolutely,
you want to go back again, right?
Highly recommend.
Sick.
Definitely on the list to go back. They joked on LinkedIn that they'll invite me back because of my power cut heroics. So, you know, give me a chance to not have a power cut. But yeah, we'll see what happens. And then, as I said, Budapest itself, because I wanted to not do too many talks this year. I've ended up doing I think 4. But 3 of them were said yes to before I got my new job. So but the reason why I said yes to Husteth was, it was like, I think me and you have spoken about this before. One thing I love about public speaking, especially at conferences that I believe are supportive, is you kind of get to travel, not for free, because it does cost money when, you know, you got to buy food and stuff like this, right? It's not usually a net zero cost, right? But it's a lot cheaper than taking yourself to Budapest for a week. And everything. So when it was a place I'd not been to, I was like, you know what, like, this is great. It's a keynote, or even if it wasn't a keynote, it's a trip to a country I've not been to. It's the opportunity to, you know, see a new city, go to a new event, and yeah, it was, I really, really enjoyed it. And Budapest, had a great day exploring on my own the first day, and then I went out with Chris Armstrong and Alex Krumsov, I think his surname is. I just call him Romanian Alex. That's what I know him as.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he's a lot of fun. He's a cool guy.
Yeah. So we went exploring together, had a good day, got some scooters, scooted around on the e-scooters. And then I actually did meet up with one of the attendees for dinner. He told me he was staying for a day. So me and Harvey, we went on a romantic boat cruise, but he wanted to go on a boat trip, so we managed to sneak on. Not sneak on. That sounds like we jumped on a boat. We managed to find a boat that wasn't fully booked on a Friday night in Budapest. So yeah, we ended up doing a quick cruise down the river, and then we went for dinner.
Unlikely. I don't know how to pull that off.
And had a really good chat about, life and what he's doing at work and stuff. So, I think that, talking about the conversations, to go back to the start of the pod, like, conferences are another great place to have these conversations. But
Yep.
I think a lesson to learn from some of these conferences, though, is to find the right moment in the conference for you to have those conversations, right? So, like, me and you are more social, right? Obviously, you don't drink. So, like, for me, going to the pub and hanging out in the pubs and drinking and chatting is high on the list. You do come to the pubs, but it's not an environment you'll go to it, but it wouldn't be your choice, right? You'd probably rather go to a vegan shack and have dinner with people whilst eating delicious vegan food, right?
It depends where we are. If we're in Brighton, I'm going to What the Pitta. If I'm in Manchester, I'm also going to What the Pitta.
What the Pitta.
Man, Manchester's got so many good eating options.
But my point is, like, you're probably more inclined to go for a dinner and have those conversations, right? Or like maybe a coffee shop or whatever.
Yeah,
it's just a scenario. I'm more inclined to go to the pub. Some people will be more inclined to try and do it during the breaks. Some people, like, what I'm saying is there's multiple ways to have these conversations at events. In the event itself, but also around.
I was going to say, most events these days, or at least the ones that I go to, they create spaces that afford you the chance of interacting with people.
Yeah,
so lunch is a good one.
Yeah.
But the hallway track is still the hallway track. The hallway track is quite often the best track at a conference, and that is a term that I learned to describe the conversations that happen outside of the scheduled talks. So if you and one or two or three other people are just milling around in, I don't know, the reception area of a conference and you just start talking, those conversations are pretty sick. Like, you can usually learn a thing, or you'll hear people say, oh, this talk or that talk was terrible, or this was fun, or learned a thing there, or whatever. So yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
What are you giggling about? What's happened?
I'm laughing because I'm going to call them out. I'm not going to name them, but I'm going to call them out. At Husteth, on 2 occasions, I was prepping my talk, and when I came out into the hallway track, as we've just labelled it, right? A circle of speakers. Like, and I know why it happens, right? Because we don't, speakers like on the circuit, as I'm going to call it, which makes us sound like, a band.
Grand. Big grand.
Yeah, we also need to catch up, but it's a call to action that I need to listen to, and I'm encouraging others to do it. Speakers love to hang out with speakers because we don't see each other, and a lot of us are friends. But I also feel that I think sometimes we need to break that pattern, because I don't know, I don't know what a circle of speakers looks like to attendees. Like, is that something you're going to try and get in? Obviously, we can do the Pac-Man rule, but still, it's like, speakers. So I think at Husteth, I saw it happen twice, and I was part of it once, and I went, this is just speakers. So I feel like there's also not a responsibility on speakers, but I think it's good for speakers to also try and be a bit more engaging. I don't know though.
I would go so far as to say there is a responsibility on speakers to do that, because I think it makes the conference work better.
Yeah,
it just feels more welcoming. If you go to a conference and you're a speaker, there's this myth that I keep trying to. You've probably heard me say this before, but the people on stage are not awesome because they were on stage. They were already awesome before they got on the stage, and that's important because the audience is also awesome. But there is this perception that you're a speaker, so this, that, and the other. And that is an achievement. I'm not trying to poo-poo that thing.
Yeah,
it is an achievement. I think you're right. It can make some people a little bit hesitant to approach. And so if you've got a whole, group of people who are, obviously on the schedule and ironically speaking to each other, that might be a little bit intimidating. I think the call to action is on the speakers to be mindful of that. I think, and to invite people to conversations. If they would like to, or if you see, at lunchtime, maybe don't sit with people that as the speaker I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is all context, because maybe you as a speaker have gone there and you don't know anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
Or maybe you as a speaker are feeling drained.
Absolutely.
And you just want to recharge your batteries, kind of want to escape. Definitely all of those things apply, and prioritize accordingly. But yeah, generally speaking, I don't think that's a bad idea. I don't think that's a good.
Yeah. If you don't know what the Pac-Man rule is that I mentioned, it's basically instead of standing in a closed circle, leave a part of the circle open so it looks a bit like a Pac-Man, and that kind of makes people feel like they can join the circle. So I think a lot of people are good at doing that. But yeah, overall, I think conferences, especially Husteth, was really good. So yeah, how do we wrap this up, Vernon? Because we didn't remotely talk about what I wrote down to talk about, but I really enjoyed what we spoke about. So basically, collecting Fieldstones, sharing your insights, attend conferences.
No. Sorry. If I can't promote my book on my own podcast, then we've got a problem. The first thing we talked about was the book I wrote with my dear friend Nicola Lindgren, The Software Tester's Journey.
This
Go
book.
and buy the thing. It's awesome. Yeah, the book that will be somewhere around this video. It's got 5-star reviews from people like me and Nicola. No, I'm kidding. There are testimonials. Please go and read it. It's really useful. If you're not a tester, get it for the tester in your life. It gives you some really good advice around where to take your career. You can find it on LeanPub. So that's leanpub.com/tester's journey. And that's all one word, tester's journey.
Is it staying as a...
when we talked about...
Is it staying as an ebook, or will there be a printed version at some point? Oh, unsure yet.
A printed version. Awesome. We're going to have a printed version, so we're going to start with the digital first.
Nice. Well, I don't want to say it the C word, but it is nearly Christmas time. So if you got like secret Santas for your testers, get them a copy of this book. Something along those lines. So yeah, the book. The way the book came along, we were discussing about collecting Fieldstones, collecting these nuggets, these experiences, these observations, because they're going to be really useful throughout your career, whether you want to be a content creator or you just want to keep your CV on fire, if you want to be ready for your end-of-year reviews and have, these experiences to tell your boss, like, start collecting these little, these stones as Jerry calls them, because
collect them and share them.
Get in the habit of doing it, because it really is. I think on reflection, someone asked me about career I don't know, a couple of months ago now, and I think I did say that community made a big difference in my career, but I think it was because of collecting stones and sharing, stories, experiences, insights. Like, the community kind of happened naturally, but if I hadn't have been wanting to share these things, I probably would never have found it anyway. So I think like the sharing of it, and then that's how it continues to happen. Like we said, if you build content, if you reply or you start conversations, you're being a part of it. Even starting a conversation might be collecting a stone for you, right? Read Vernon and read Vernon and Nicola's book, and then write a review. That's probably causing you to reflect and think, and maybe collecting your stone there. And then conferences, attend them, speak at them. They're amazing. It's a great way to see the world, great experience speaking, and lots more insights to collect while you're there as well, and networks to build, which are going to help with your career. And then do a podcast. All right, that's it.
I think that covers it, man.
Subscribe, share, like, feedback.
Please like, comment, share, subscribe. If you've got a tester in your life, share it with them. If there are other testers that that don't listen to the podcast, please encourage them to listen. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. That helps us out a lot. Wherever you listen to your podcast, leave a glowing 5-star review. Let's test out the 5-star review functionality on all the podcast apps that are out there. Awesome. And that is it, isn't it, Rich? Done.
All right. Goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.